Welcome to the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley, psychology student and international best-selling psychology author of over 30 psychology books, bringing you the latest psychology news, fascinating psychology topics and more each week. If you want to learn more, then please check out connorwhiteley.net/books. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube video or follow on your favourite podcast app. And here's the show. Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 313 of the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley. And today's episode is a lot of fun because it's on what is media psychology. And it is Friday, the 7th of March 2025 as I record this. So, media psychology, it's a brand new area of psychology, but it is actually slightly older than everyone thinks because I've managed to trace it back to about 1916, but then it pops up in different forms throughout the next 100 years into media psychology as we know it today. But in terms of mainstream psychology, it's brand new and it's all about investigating how humans are impacted by technology and the media. So it's a lot of fun, it's really interesting, and as you'll see in today's podcast episode, going forward, I think that this area of psychology is only going to get more important, more valuable, and more critical, which is why, to be honest, I had such trouble thinking of a sponsored product for today's episode, because this does draw on social media psychology, it also draws upon careers in psychology, and this also talks about applied psychology. We're applying psychological theory to the real world, to solve real world problems. So this episode covers a lot, it's a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed this because, to be fair, I did have a lot of trouble picking a topic for this week. So by the end of today's episode, you're going to understand what is media psychology, also what is media psychology study, and also what are the career options, and also the history of media psychology. So you're going to learn a lot for sure. So that's coming up in the content part of today's episode. But moving on to the Psychology News section, we're reading from the British Psychological Society Research Digest. And the first one is, Teachers triage the effects of online misogyny. Online spaces currently leave a lot to be desired in terms of safeguarding. Of particular note, the past few years have seen a surge in misogynistic content and the normalization of harmful views about women. The rise in popularity and notoriety of net citizens such as Andrew Tate have played no small role in this. Today, though, the ways that exposure to self-described alpha male influences and their satellites has influenced the behaviour and experiences of kids in Britain has remained largely unexplored in the literature. That is until now. New work by Harriet Over and team at the University of York, published late February in PLAS 1, sheds light on the influence of online misogyny in both secondary and primary schools and suggests we already have the beginnings of our paths towards stamping out its effects. So, for starters, there's a lot I've got to say about this article. So, for starters, as someone who unfortunately has to do regular safeguarding, not only safeguarding training, also I've had to report safeguarding things before, and that's all I can say on the matter, is that it is heartbreaking, and I know the stress and the concern that teachers and other people in positions of care basically have to go through when it comes to children. Because, to be honest, everyone who works with children does do the work of the gods, but there's a lot more that actually goes into the work than lots of people think. Because whenever I mention safeguarding more generally, people are like, why do you have to do that? You only work with the children, you want X, Y, and Z. So it does involve quite a lot, And yes, safeguarding is flat out critical. It's one of the best ways to protect children and young people. And yet, there's a lot more that I could say about it, but again, that is not the point of this psychology news section. But I definitely think that misogyny, of course, is flat out damaging. It's something we've got to tackle because unfortunately it is increasing. I only have to scroll through any sort of like social media, let alone Twitter, to find misogynistic content, and I have to block people that turns out I didn't even follow. That is one of the reasons why I hate Twitter with an utter passion. Passion though. So, and yeah, Andrew Tate, just an absolute idiot. I hate the guy, he's disgusting. And these whole alpha males, I just don't understand, to be fair. But it's interesting from a psychology point of view, especially as my supervisor does a lot of research on incels and misogyny, which is something I talk about at length in my book, Applied Psychology. But but the entire point of this is that yes, this is something that is impacting kids. It is something that we've got to tackle, and it's very good that we are starting to research it because by understanding how this is impacting kids, that's how we help raise alarm bells. It's how we get governments to listen, who can hopefully do legislation to hopefully hold these online spaces accountable. But then you get into the whole mess about enforcement, lobbyists, just the not common sense and not ideal version of politics. But research is a flat out critical, and we've got to start understanding how this impacts children, just so we can better protect children for the future. And try and stop this surge in misogynistic content. So the second one is borderline disconnected. The feeling that we are located within our physical body for most of us is a fundamental fact of existence. For most people, our brain continuously generates this perception using signals from different senses, as well as expectations about what those signals should mean. This perception, however, is vulnerable to interference, and if that happens, the result can be feeling of dissociation from the body, or even a full-blown out-of-body experience. For some, including those diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, feelings of bodily dissociation are not rare events. In fact, about 80% of people with BPD report dissociative symptoms, though the reason for this has been unclear. A new study in personality disorders theory, research and treatment, however, suggests that unusual sensory processing may play a key. Okay, yeah, so because of my past egg experiences with various people who I can't go into much depth with, BPD is something that I'm familiar with, and I think that it's very unfortunate that there is unusual sensory processing that does play a key role, though, because this is what we see in quite a few different mental health conditions, or at least the umbrella terms, because that's where psychosis happens, because also hearing the voices, which is a very common amongst the clinically healthy population too. So sensory processing definitely does have a lot of different impacts in terms of our mental health level, but also how we perceive the world, and it can warp our perception. To be honest, because I don't want to go into details about personal experience, this is something that I can't really comment on though. But it is interesting that once we find out what causes this bodily dissociation, it'd be interesting what happens next. Because if it is caused by an unusual sensory processing, then I think it depends on what is causing this unusualness. Is it something psychological? For example, is it an interpretation? Because if that's the case, then the treatment is definitely more psychological. For example, some form of CBT. So do we adapt an existing form of a CBT, or do we try and use CBT elements to create a whole new one? Or is if it's biological, then we're going to have to do a more biological treatment. For example, to be honest, I'm actually not that familiar with biological treatments when it comes to sensory processing. But there's a lot of thoughts that once we know this, we can do a lot with. Hopefully, we can help people with a BPD to actually come back into their bodies and hopefully have a less feelings of bodily dissociation. So the last one is the making of memory. About three-quarters of the people aged 65 and older report problems with their memory. According to the NHS, in the UK, 1 in 11 people aged 65 and over have dementia. A better understanding of the causes of brain aging and when it begins, however, could reduce these numbers. Recent work in molecular psychiatry provides one such useful insight. In their latest paper, Jill M. Goldstein at Harvard Medical School and her colleagues draw on immune data from a longitudinal study that began in the 1960s and discovered that a mother's immune state while she's pregnant can have a lasting impact on her children's brain health. Okay, that's interesting because last time I did a neuropsychology of aging module, which is where we look at healthy age brain compared to pathological brain aging. Sorry there. And there's a lot of different factors. To be honest, I've actually got to start revising for my test at some point. But to be honest, I've got to get all my notes together so I can start revising because I probably have an exam in 2 months. Okay then, I've actually got to do that. That's actually got to go on the to-do list this week. So anyway though, I think that the idea that a mother's immune state can impact their child's brain health is fascinating. I don't know what we do with that information though, because this is not a psychology issue. This is not a psychology problem that psychology can solve. This is more of a systemic issue because, yes, if we take the stance that if we want to reduce the burden on mental health services and society as a whole that dementia causes, and of course, most importantly, save people's lives, give them higher quality of life just so they don't have dementia, as well as keep families together and happy into older age, then if we take that stance, which in my personal opinion is the only stance we should be taking, then if we try and improve mothers' immune state, then that is a larger societal issue when it comes to public health because I imagine, and I am no health expert, I'm not a medical doctor by any stretch of the imagination, but I imagine that a mother's immune state is determined by biological health, obviously, and if there are certain health inequalities in the area, for example, people in more deprived areas, people who live in coastal towns here in the UK, I imagine they would have worse immune states. So by decreasing these health inequalities as a whole, then hopefully the children's brain health would be better going forward, which would therefore reduce dementia cases in the future. Again, that I think is well beyond the scope of psychology, let alone this podcast. But it does show the importance of tackling health in terms of a public health policy. We've got to target health more generally as a society. So, I hope you enjoy the psychology news section. So let's move on to the personal update. So we're moving on to the personal update. This week has been absolute fun chaos because even I admit I can give myself way too much to do at times. But maybe, just maybe, giving myself 300 things to do on my to-do list, granted some of them were quite small, on a week where I do not have some full days. For example, I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons tomorrow with my friends, and then I'm playing board games in the night. I'm playing board games basically all Sunday afternoon with my housemates, and I'm doing a bunch of other stuff. Maybe that was not a good idea. And then I've also been stressed for a different reason. But generally, it's been such a fun week. I've started a new psychology book. I'm having a blast of writing it because I've definitely learned a lot. And a lot of that. It's another clinical psychology reflections book, and these ones are a lot of fun. I'm really in like enjoying it. And I had actually forgotten how much I enjoy these books because these books are always based on my fact-based opinions and different quotes, different things that I've seen in the Psychologist magazine. And I just love that these books because it's a chance for me to reflect as a aspiring clinical psychologist and just think about different things that were, for example, I wrote one earlier based on an experience I had, something I'm actually quite stressed about at the moment, to do with having a conversation with a partner about the fact that I was raped. It was good to process that, and it was good to give advice along the way for future people who, to be honest, could like very well work with a sexual assault survivors. Because as I was saying in this blog post, or to be honest, this reflection, the issue is that because sexual violence is so common within our society, chances are when someone walks through your therapy room, at some point in your career, you will have to support a survivor, and they might come at you because of their trauma, but also they might come at you for a completely different reason. For example, my anorexia counsellor, I'm going to her for anorexia. Nothing really to do with my rape, but again though, this is all connected though. So I'm having a lot of fun with this book, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff that I talk about as well in this book, including lots of fascinating things that I learned, and I'm really excited by. And then I've also been doing lots of other projects, including some data analysis. I also finally finished writing an academic paper last Sunday, and I also submitted ethics, so I'm doing lots of different pieces. But as you all know, I love being busy. I love doing psychology, my fiction projects, and everything else that I do. Life is brilliant. So, as always, I always love to hear your thoughts and feelings on today's episode. So, you can always email me, connorwhiteley@connorwhiteley.net. You can always leave a comment at the show notes at connorwhiteley.net/podcast. And you can always tweet me on Twitter at sci-fi whiteley. I always love to hear from all of you because it really helps make the podcast feel more like a conversation. And you can always leave a comment on the LinkedIn post or Facebook post. Also, please feel free to send pictures of where you're listening from. I always love to see where you're listening from all over the world. And today's episode has been sponsored by Careers in Psychology, a guide to careers in clinical psychology, forensic psychology, business psychology, and more. So this is an absolute brilliant sponsor for today's episode, because when it comes to media psychology, I often get asked about what can you actually do with a psychology degree. Well, unfortunately, there's a massive myth in society that a psychology degree doesn't actually give you much, or there's no point doing a psychology degree because there are no jobs at the end of it. Personally, those people, especially when I get them on applicant days, including which one that I'm actually working tomorrow, I will probably get asked about jobs. Now, I don't mind that, but I think it does show a bit of ignorance, because it does show that within psychology, or within the general population, people think that psychology isn't a very prestigious degree, and clinical psychology is at the only route. But As today's episode shows, there's so much that you can do with a psychology degree because you can become a media psychologist, which is a great option for you. So that's something that we talk about in today's episode. So if you love media, if you love TV production, film production, and anything that uses technology, becoming a media psychologist might be an absolute brilliant option for you. But if you're still interested in different psychology careers, then by the end of this book, where you'll get a really good understanding of what psychology degree give you, what are the different career options in terms of academia, clinical psychology, business psychology, forensic psychology, and there's so many different areas of psychology. In fact, you can also become an experimental psychologist. So it's a brilliant book, flat out love it, and lots of people find it really useful. So that is the Careers in Psychology, available from all major ebook retailers, and you can get the paperback and hardback version from Amazon, the local bookstore or local library. And you can get the audiobook narrated by artificial intelligence at selected audiobook retailers like Spotify, Kobo, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and selected library systems, including Overdrive, Baker & Taylor, and Biblioteca. So whilst buying books helps to support the creation and the editing of the podcast, my time is sponsored by my wonderful patrons. And as always, a massive thank you to my patrons. Your support shows that you like the show and you want to continue. And so far, there are over 40 exclusive blog posts, which you can only get through the Patreon, available now or scheduled for the future. So these are brand new and exclusive blog posts, which will not become podcast episodes for a few weeks, a few months, or to be honest, maybe even a few years. So if you want to learn great psychology knowledge and to get a closer relationship with me as the creator of the podcast, then please head on over to patreon.com/the Psychology World Podcast. Or if you want to support the podcast on a one-off basis, now you can at buymeacoffee.com/Connor Whiteley. So that's enough of the personal update. Let's move on to the content part of today's episode. So we're moving on to the content part of today's episode. So we're going to be talking about what is media psychology. This is going to be a lot of fun, so let's dive into it. So as you might be aware, because media psychology isn't well renowned, it is certainly a newer branch of psychology compared to others, like cognitive psychology and behaviorism. Also, media psychology focuses on investigating how people are impacted by technology as well as the media. In addition, media psychology is important because we're constantly surrounded by media. So when I was writing up this podcast episode, I had my wireless earphones in, blasting some Demon Slayer music as I struggled to keep my anxiety out of my head about telling my partner tomorrow that I'm a rape survivor, and I have my laptop on one side with my monitor with this Word document and my research on the other screen, as well as I have my phone next to my mouse. So even though I'm working right now, I'm still surrounded by technology. And I mean, like, even now, when it comes to actually recording this, I've still got my laptop, my microphone, my phone in my pocket, also got my light lamp thingamabob, whatever you want to call it. My ring light, apologies, right in front of me. So even now, I'm still surrounded by technology. And even before I actually came to choosing the topic of today's episode though, and I got up my research, I was still reading short stories on my tablet. We are all surrounded by technology. As a result, it's important that psychology understands the impact that technology has on us. Also, media psychology is very interdisciplinary because of the constant change in how people interact with um, technology makes this a particular area of vastly difficult to define. In my opinion, this is even more relevant because we are now seeing how people are starting to change their search and digital consumption patterns with the rise of artificial intelligence, as well as how the artificial intelligence is revolutionizing and changing companies and the workplace. Building upon this, media psychology is heavily influenced by obviously psychology, but academia focusing on communication too, like sociology, anthropology, fan studies, and media studies. Because of this, a lot of media psychology researchers don't consider psychology to be their main area of research, because they believe their main research area is media's influence on individuals, rather than a subtopic within a larger area of expertise. Interestingly, last month I went to a postgraduate talk on Taylor Swift and feminism, and looking back, I suppose that this is largely about how individuals interact with her music, her messages, and her as a fan culture. The lecturer giving the talk was a doctor of English literature, and she gave a brilliant talk. Yeah, it's interesting to think about how English literature in this situation could fall under the umbrella of psychology, because she was studying the texts and lyrics to see how Taylor Swift has the impact that she does on individuals. Ultimately, according to the Oxford Handbook of Media Psychology, the discipline is defined as, open quote, media psychology is the scientific study of human behavior, thoughts, and feelings experienced in the context of media use and creation. Close quote. What does media psychology study? We already know media psychology focuses on investigating the interaction between people and technology, but here are some specific topics that media psychologists can study. Online learning is a topic of interest as it helps media psychologists to understand the impact of online teaching, for example, and how in-person lessons can be enhanced by technology or adapted for online teaching, as well as how media messages can be constructed to encourage someone to give to a charity or to do another pro-social behaviour. Media influence is another topic that media psychologists get excited by. They could investigate the impact of how exposure to media depictions of violence might or might not increase aggression, how depictions of gender roles impact sexist attitudes or perpetuates harmful gender stereotypes, and so on. In addition, media psychologists investigate audience involvement, such as why do we cry or laugh at certain moments in a TV program or film? How do stories impact our sense of self, our identity, and our social norms? As well as why do popular culture fans come together to form supportive or sometimes toxic communities? Personally, given how I live with three people who flat out love Minecraft, and I constantly hear about different things they're doing in Minecraft, and the streamers who are popular in legal trouble and so on, I would be interested in knowing how Minecraft developed such a cult following. One final topic of interest is the impact of social media. Media psychologists investigate how social media platforms could create a more comprehensive view of the world instead of an echo chamber that amplifies hate and toxic body image ideals, as well as researchers could investigate how different types of social media can impact mental health conditions like depression and anxiety. And if you want to learn more about social media use, definitely check out my book, Social Media Psychology. How did the media psychology develop? So, interestingly, media psychology isn't as new as everyone thinks it is, because Hugo Musterberg was the first person to look empirically at how an audience responded to a film in his 1916 book, The Photoplay, a Psychological Study. Then it came into the mainstream a little more in the 1950s, when psychologists started to look more into how the media impacted children. Nonetheless, media psychology itself wasn't brought into the mainstream until 1986, when the American Psychological Association established the Media Psychology Division as the organization's 46th division. When it first started, it focused on psychologists who appeared in the media as expert witnesses and sources of information. This is still somewhat the function of the division today, but it has changed its name to the Society for Media Psychology and Technology in the United States. Its current focus is researching the effects and influence of media. Finally, whilst in recent years the field has expanded to include various journals focusing on media psychology, and there is an increase in universities dedicating modules, courses, and research into media psychology, in 2003, the only APA accredited, and this was still true as of 2023, media psychology PhD program was at Fielding Graduate University. What are some careers in media psychology? It is certainly true that other areas of psychology have better defined career routes, but media psychology has a few options for people. Media psychologists becoming an academic researcher is very normal, and it is the standard career route. One reason why media psychology doesn't have a lot of defined career routes at the moment is because it is still so new, and the discipline is still defining its scope as well as its purview. However, the context I always see media psychologists being employed is on TV and film production crews. This is important because in an ever-expanding world of technology, this represents a chance for a lot of opportunities to apply media psychology in a wide range of industries, from TV to film to education as well as politics. Everyone wants to know about how technology impacts us so they can create better health and safety rules, laws, and regulations that better protect people. Now, I would be surprised if anyone listening to this podcast does not know about Love Island. And before you ask, no, I do not watch it, but it is impossible not to be aware of it in the UK. Here, I know reality TV programs like Love Island are starting to employ media psychologists to better help them understand and protect the mental health of their contestants. Moreover, media psychologists are important for teaching young children lessons in media as well as cyber literacy from a young age. In these situations, media psychologists are very useful because they can be experts in designing and implementing these programs. Conclusion. What is the future of media psychology? So, in this Cyberpsychology podcast episode, we've learned that media psychology investigates how people are impacted by technology as well as the media. Also, whilst early media psychology focused on the negative impacts of media, it is important to recognize that modern media psychology recognizes that media and technology isn't all good nor all bad. What matters is how we use technology, and with the constantly changing nature of technology and media, all of us as individuals and as a society, we must learn how to maximize the positives of technology whilst minimizing the negatives. Thankfully, this is where media psychologists come in, because they play a crucial role in helping our understanding of how to navigate these developments, which in the current world, because of artificial intelligence, let alone other forms of technology and media, changes and advances weekly, the job of media psychologists are more important than ever. Moreover, when it comes to the future of the media psychology, I think the discipline will only grow in popularity and importance as we look to examine the positives and negatives of new forms of media and technology and how they impact individuals. Then, as we race to catch up with technology in terms of laws, regulations, and acts of parliament, we need to use media psychologists to advise us, production companies, and government about how best to protect people. Because for me, that is the entire point of psychology. Psychology is a force for good, and I strongly believe media psychology is flat out critical for the future. So, if you're interested in understanding how the media impacts people, then maybe check out courses and careers in media psychology. You never know what weird, wonderful, and fascinating places it might lead you. So, I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode and you got something out of it. I know that I did because after seeing these online media psychology courses so often, and to be honest, £100 is actually quite a good price for a course, which I might still look into. I really wanted to understand it, see its relevance, and now I'm actually quite excited about it. And to be honest, I might look at cyberpsychology more in the future on the podcast because it has always been important, but now with the rise of artificial intelligence, it's starting to become even more critical than ever before. So if you know anyone who would enjoy today's episode, then please share it with them. Always grateful when you wonderful people help spread the word about the podcast. And if you want to learn more, please check out Careers in Psychology, available in all the usual places, and you can get the audiobook narrated by artificial intelligence at selected audiobook platforms like Spotify, Kobo, Google Play, and more. And if you want to support the podcast on a monthly basis and get access to great rewards, then please head on over to patreon.com/the Psychology World podcast. Or if you want to support the podcast on a one-off basis, then head on over to buymeacoffee.com/Connor Whiteley. So, have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Found it helpful. Please remember to like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow the podcast on your favourite podcast app. And if you wanted to learn more, then please check out the backlist of the podcast episodes or my books at conwhiteley.net. So have a great day and I'll see you next time.